Hello and welcome to Minivangelism in the driver's seat, where we talk about the Bible without the kids in the car. If the kids are in the car, go give them something else to do, because today we are talking about
mattress stores
and pride and
the power of a praying mama.
We're glad you're here. Let's go.
Let's go.
Hello and welcome to Minivangelism, the driver's seat, where we talk about the Bible without the kids in the car. If the kids are in the car, go let them do something else. And stick around, because today we are talking about Daniel and the lion's den.
Yeah. Is it Daniel and the lion's den, or is it Daniel in the lion's den?
I think it's like apostrophe in apostrophe.
Okay. Daniel in the lion's den.
Daniel in the lion's den. Yeah.
Yeah. And
like
it's lions.
bucket o' chicken, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the lion's den.
People aren't even going to understand it. Yeah. Great. Famous story.
Yeah.
What version of this story did you inherit?
I mean, I inherited the story. Like, it's Sunday school story. Just like Jonah. Like, this is anytime or Noah, anytime you're involving animals and miracles, like, give it to the kids, because they're going to love it.
Absolutely.
And it's a fairly straightforward story of, Daniel's in trouble.
Yeah.
Doesn't stop praying. Gets thrown in the lion's den. God, he saves him. Done.
Right.
Like, the end.
I think I actually remember an animated VHS tape for this one.
It was one of the VHS tapes.
Yeah.
Maybe we watched the same one.
Oh.
Twins.
Underneath the same bright VHS tape. That's great.
No, so we didn't include this in the Minivangelism, but, I grew up in a church that was like, we're going to give you the whole Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So the story doesn't end with Daniel coming out of the pit.
True.
The story ends with King Darius throwing the people that manipulated him into the pit with their wives and children.
So satisfying.
That is no, it's not. What the hell?
Sorry.
Yeah, I just remember them saying yeah, they done got it. Their wives and kids and all of them went in there, and I was like, okay, neat. Okay, here's your dum-dum. Go to church.
Yeah.
Did you get that part when you were a kid?
No, I don't think so. The problem with that, of course, is it makes Darius out to look like God. But that's not what God does. That's what Darius does. So there's a difference.
Well, I read something recently about that because it bothered. It was an uncomfortable moment in the Bible.
Yeah.
And it bothered me. But somebody said it goes to show the cruelty of the Persians.
Right.
You know what I mean? This is definitely not a reflection of God and God's people. It's yes, he's following God. Yes, he's doing things, but there's still an exile with these heathen people.
Yeah.
That, show no mercy.
Well, and when I jokingly said, it's so satisfying, if you're among the exiles and you've seen your own children, family destroyed by incoming Babylonians.
Yes.
Then it makes sense for the story to include some level of justice or vengeance, that is satisfying.
Yeah. If you have been wronged, seeing the perpetrator
right.
get what's coming to him is,
Now, if you keep reading the Bible, Old and New Testament, that thirst for vengeance will be problematized.
Yes.
But in the near term, I honestly think in original tellings of the story, that happens to cheers. Mm-hmm. Because we like seeing our oppressors get what's coming to them. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to take that away from oppressed people.
No.
And at the same time, there is more to the story.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. So tell me about your, what are your memories of the story? Things that you remember.
Yeah. I just feel I remember the look of the inside of the den and the lions prowling around, looking threatening. Now it may be a fusion of that Bible VHS tape and the Lion King. I don't know in my memory, but that's what I remember most. I don't remember the human characters really. It's the lions.
Yeah.
It's the lions.
Yeah.
What else bothers you about the story?
Nothing really bothers me about this stuff. I don't. Okay, there is one thing that bothers me. I don't like admiring a vegan.
So I think I know what you mean, but go ahead and unpack that.
In the Bible, like Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, like they had like a very specific diet that they followed, which was just plants, like no grains, no honey, no meat, no dairy, like nothing. And that's like a thing that people do now. It's called the Daniel fast. And like you can do it. And people typically do it for like 28 days or something like that,
Right.
which is a lot. And I have attempted it. Yes, I attempted it and it's awful. And, I learned how to cook tofu. Just telling a vegan that they're doing a good job. I just don't like that. So I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm a big fan of the vegans. I'm just jealous of them.
It's ironic that we read the book of Daniel and think, oh, a diet plan. You know, that is not what this is.
It's not a diet plan. It's like very much like a spiritual thing. So the church that I taught at when I first started teaching, I taught at a private school that's connected to church. And like, that's what they did every January.
Right.
Was like, we are going to like cleanse ourselves spiritually. And I was like, I mean, and if I can drop a gene size, then why not?
Yeah. I mean, even if it's not just a diet, but a spiritual plan, what bothers me about that is it takes a story about God and makes it about us.
Yes.
And I think what bothers me about this story and kind of the book of Daniel is that that Daniel actually is portrayed as blameless.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, come on.
They say that.
Yeah.
He has found like he is blameless in the Lord's sight or something like that. Like they use the actual word blameless.
And what bothers me about that is how easy the temptation is. Just eat like Daniel, and you'll be like Daniel, and you'll be like God, and
pray 3 times a day.
That's how the devil talks. So in fact, I think it's a story much more about God than about how great Daniel was. So I mean, he gets lifted up as a hero, and I just like my heroes with more flaws than Daniel has.
See, this is so refreshing to me because I feel like this is the first story that's not about Jesus, where the hero is a good guy.
Right.
Because I'm always on here like, God, I really don't like God using these bad people, and then I'm like, we got one.
And meanwhile, I'm like, dang it. He's too good. In what way is this a story about God and not about Daniel?
I think that God revealing himself time and time again to like every king that comes up, you know what I mean? Like that he's there, right? And he is using Daniel. He's using these circumstances, and it shows that God can move the hearts of kings, even kings that don't believe in him, right? Even pagan kings, even pagan lands, you know, all of these things, God is still in control. He's in control in Babylon. He's present in Babylon. He's there in Babylon.
Right.
And what's really interesting, I know you said this isn't about Daniel, but it is. What's really interesting is that the next king that comes after Darius, Cyrus is the one that like jumpstarts the return from exile. Right. And it's because of Daniel. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And Cyrus kind of seeing the God of Israel as somebody that needs to be revered, and he sends them home. And so, yeah.
Again, I think the mistake to be avoided is that what we learn about God in this story is how much he likes Daniel. I think it's about how God is just there. Yep. And I'm yes-anding. I agree with everything you said. I promise. My and is that in the greater narrative, this is about God's preservation of Israel. And even if it gets down to one man, that one man is going to experience a lot of miracles because God,
he's vegan.
because he's vegan and he prays, because God has big plans for this people. And so in the greater scheme of things, this is about God preserving a people, even in the face of evil powers, the powers of sin and death. And I think that it's interesting to me that we see this happening, but it's a story in which God is mostly invisible. We hear things about God. Daniel says things about God, but God is mostly invisible in the story. And so part of where we're pointed to God is this unseen force, keeping promises in the face of threats to that promise.
Well, and in this story, the first person to acknowledge God is Darius. Mm-hmm. It's when Daniel gets thrown in the pit and, he's like rolling the stone and pressing a signet ring. And he says to Daniel, like, I hope your God is with you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Daniel doesn't say anything. Daniel doesn't really talk in the story, but like Darius is the one that's like, your
Let's
God.
see.
Yeah.
Let's see about this God. Yeah.
I have faith.
Right. And that's also a cool detail in connection to the Jonah story too, because in the Jonah story, the people who fear God are everybody but Jonah.
Right.
Yeah. I think it bugs me consistently that God is unseen.
Why is that?
Because like seeing is believing. Like,
Okay, Thomas.
I don't mind confessing that like I would much rather God show up and, point to the right thing to do or shut the lions' mouths or set a feast before me, but this is one of those stories where we're invited to take this as gospel and trust an unseen God.
Do you think the image of the angel coming in and shutting their mouths is an unseen God?
I mean, that's a good point. Not entirely unseen. I also that's one of my eye wonders is why don't we get details from that scene? We don't get many details from when Jesus is in the grave either.
Yeah.
Like what did that look like? Daniel testifies the angels came. Is he using metaphorical or literal language there?
Right.
What did that look like?
There's this really interesting Jewish midrash that I read
Really?
about this. Yes, where they said that the angel actually sat on top of the stone that was over the den in the form of a lion to let everybody know that Daniel was protected in the den.
That's cool.
Isn't that so cool?
Yeah. See, at the end
I love that image.
Absolutely. Not to mention that in the Easter story, there's one version where the angels are sitting on top of the stone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I just picture an angel in there playing whack-a-mole, with some kind of stick. Nope. To all the lions, like a lion tamer.
Well, another midrash has the lions like coming up to Daniel like dogs that see their master for the first time.
I love
and
that.
so like Daniel goes in there and all the lions are like, hey.
Yeah. Can I get a treat?
Yeah. And just like snuggling him and sleeping, you know what I mean? Like, because that's an image that I remember from that video is like they roll back the stone and Daniel's just like, he's got like a bed of lions.
That's right.
And he's just like laying on them.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, it's worth just noting a couple hyperlinks to other things that include lions in the Bible. Mm-hmm. It's from Daniel and Isaiah that we get the language of the Messiah that he will be the Lion of Judah. Mm-hmm. So there's some irony there that the lion that really is the lion is Jesus, or that the one who is to come is not just going to be like Daniel, but like a lion. Mm-hmm. That's kind of curious. And then, of course, there's also the language from Isaiah about this coming age in which the lion and the lamb will lie down together.
Yeah.
And images of lion and lamb that have been created by artists remind me a lot of images I've seen of Daniel and the lions, that they're actually quite peaceful down in that den and getting, a great night's sleep.
Yeah.
But if you follow that image, Christ is both the Lion of Judah and the Lamb of God. And it's almost as if in him we see the fullness of God's power in the lion and the fullness of God's mercy in the lamb, or even the fullness of God's willingness to become a victim and lie with us who are all the more likely to devour him.
Right.
And even that duality of that image, lion and lamb, makes me think of icons of Jesus. Mm-hmm. There's a tradition in painting icons, or it's actually called writing on icons of Jesus, where the two sides of Jesus' face, if you cover up one half, he looks stern. If you cover up the other half, he looks peaceful. And in the Orthodox tradition of writing icons, this is Christ's divine and human natures, the nature of a just God and our friend Jesus.
Yeah.
Or you can switch it and say the nature of humanity that demands vengeance. Like that's the stern look, and the placid look of a peaceful God. So yeah, that's just a little excursion through the idea of lions and the image of lions in the Bible and the Christian tradition.
I love that.
Nobody even asked for that.
No, but I think that's so cool. I have two side thoughts that aren't related.
Great.
To this. First of all, anytime I see artistry about the Lion of Judah, it really bothers me because they use African lions when the prophets would have been using referring to Asiatic lions, which are extinct now and did not look anything like the African lions that we have.
Love that about you.
Sorry, it gets me every time. And anytime you see illustrations of Daniel in the lion's den, it's those are
what do
African
Asiatic lions look like?
They were smaller. They kind of look like mountain lions a little bit. Yeah.
Bobcat.
Yeah. No.
Cougar.
Have I ever told you about my encounter with a bobcat in college?
No.
I'll tell you about that later. Anyways.
Actual bobcat, or is that a nickname for some dude?
No. It was an actual bobcat.
Or construction equipment.
No. And I came face to face with it on a bridge. Because I went to school in rural North Georgia.
Yeah.
And it decided that the chipmunk it was chasing was more appetizing than me, which rude. But and it ran away. But we stopped and looked at each other for a hot minute, and I was like, I am wearing Crocs. I am not going to be able to run fast.
Well, you had your own Anna in the lion's den.
Yeah, moment. I did. Anyway, but that. Regardless, we'll probably edit that out. But the other thing is, I just had this thought of we should start a Judeo-Christian mattress firm, and it's lions, the softness of a lion in our advertising.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just a side note. Hello, sharks.
It could be our main source of income.
Hello, sharks. How many of you know the story of Daniel and the lions?
I am filled with pride. Get it? For doing this project with you. Oh, that's good. All right.
Anyway, back to the story. So something else that bothers me legitimately is Daniel gets in his window and prays 3 times a day. Let's fast forward in the Bible. Jesus has a big problem with public prayer.
Oh, yeah.
The Pharisees standing out there and praying all big and loud.
But do you really think that's what Daniel's doing?
No, but... Well, yeah, I do. He is throwing the windows open and, praying in front of the windows before the law was even passed. I could see this being a protest against an unjust law. And, I don't agree with this, and so I am going to intentionally pray in front of this window. I get that. It's the before, where ain't nobody saying nothing to him, and he's just getting up there, so much so that he has a reputation.
Yeah.
I don't know. And, anytime I read Jesus's thing about, go in your closet, you know what I mean? Anytime I read about that, I always think back to Daniel.
Right.
And once again, the image from that video of I remember that too, of him sitting in front of the window and praying. I don't know. It's not connecting in my brain.
Yeah.
Make it connect.
Well, I think my take is that in the story itself, Daniel's prayer is, I don't think we're supposed to get hypocrisy from it.
Okay.
I think we're supposed to get faithfulness from it.
Okay.
So he's either a good, dutiful Jew or an activist prophetically praying in public because, F your Chaldean gods. I already have one. Or he's an evangelist praying in public so that, you see what God has done for me. This is my relationship with that God and can be your relationship too. The hypocrisy... the hypocrisy that Jesus calls out is when prayer becomes a part of a status game, where whoever prays the loudest, heaps up the most words, wins. And Jesus is the one who says, forget the status game. You're not talking to God. You're talking to anybody who will listen. Go into your closet where nobody's going to give you credit for praying. And there you might actually encounter the real God. Ironic that like Jesus says, go into a closet, and where Daniel actually encounters God in this story is in a lion's den. So it's the reward happens in the midst of, it happens kind of off stage. The reward happens in the midst of death. The reward is promised in the closet, not actually out in public like that. So not to be confused with Pride Month out and in the closet. This is different, but yeah. What's funny is like you're trying to problematize Daniel, and I'm the one who wishes he was problematized, and I'm saying no, I don't think he's a problem.
Okay, you asked, and I am trying to help you out, buddy.
Yeah, I think I mean that kind of conflict between what we see in the story of Daniel and what we see in Jesus is good and fair. And I think in this story, Daniel is supposed to function as the only guy getting it right. And in that way, he is a figure for Jesus.
Yeah.
As the one shouting into the wind, but nevertheless being willing to continue shouting and continue praying. That in the words of Joshua, like, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. It just happens to be that there are windows and it's very visible.
Yeah.
But it's different than like just slapping a Jesus sticker on your car and considering that your evangelism.
Right. Well, and I think it should be noticed. I think the blamelessness of Daniel, I know you take issue with that, but I do think that it is important, especially in our society where so many people are very quick to wear a crucifix, slap a Jesus sticker on the back of their car, put a Bible verse in their Instagram bio, and then not live in a way that reflects that. I do think that saying that Daniel is blameless is showing that he's walking the walk and talking the talk. Right.
That it's genuine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my hot take, or like my midrash, would be, where did that faith come from? What's the backstory to where Daniel becomes somebody who, in the face of danger and racism and oppression, nevertheless sticks with this God? That has to come from somewhere.
I like to think that he had a praying mama.
I think that's probably fair. He also,
and grandmama.
I think we're led to believe that he was present for the invasion of Jerusalem, and so there's some trauma that's associated with that, and ours is a faith that says that faith not only can endure trauma, but can sometimes come out of trauma.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious. If I were interviewing Daniel, I would say, like, when did you start praying?
Yeah.
And what made you start praying? Because I think in our own lives of faith, you've heard me say this before. Like, my hot take is if we sat together long enough and you told me your story, we would find that thing that made you have not just a faith that you practice because it's what everybody's practicing, but a faith that's actually yours. Like, what made you start to pray?
Right.
And I mean, in the story of Jonah, it was being in a whale, but that's the thing that makes me curious about people I see with genuine faith. And like, I think it's the thing that's true of people we call saints too.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't born that way, somehow God got to them. And those are the stories that I'm really fascinated by.
Yeah. And it should be noted that by the time we get to this part of Daniel's life, scholars believe he was like 80.
Oh.
Yeah, he wasn't a young guy.
In my imagination, he's a perpetual teenager.
No.
Maybe that's like a little bit of Joseph leaking in.
Well, and it's in a lot of art, like, he's portrayed as a young person, but I actually found a painting of Daniel, like an accurate painting of Daniel.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was an old man. So, like,
well, that makes
this
it
isn't practice.
Yeah, that makes it a much more funny scene when he's coming out of lions than he's like, I'm not dead yet. Somebody sit down the ladder.
It's the Oh man, I can't remember what movie it's from, but there's like an
Hercules.
old man. Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's not that one. It's another one where it's like this. It's like an old guy in a cage. And then,
that's Aladdin.
yes.
Yes.
And then he like rolls out and he goes into the stocks. Like, I'm free. Yeah. But yeah, so I Daniel has been practicing this faith for so long too.
Right.
You know what I mean? That it's ingrained in him. I also, you're gonna find a problem with this take, and whatever, I'll take it. Sometimes people talk about like how hard it is to be a Christian, especially when you live in a society where not everybody is. And I am not talking about countries where it is straight up illegal to be a Christian. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about like, it's hard for me to do the right thing, or it's hard, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. And this story kind of points to, well, I mean, Daniel did it.
Right.
And that is very much a part of the story that I inherited of, you're going to face persecution. Am I? But
Right.
in, Virginia, probably not. But, you're going to face persecution. You are going to face hard times. And if you just keep praying, then it's an easy walk. Which I think that there is some merit to that take. I do. But it doesn't leave a lot of room for grace.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's an irony that you're highlighting that people who have generally pretty nice, privileged lives are also called to believe. Mm-hmm. And I think my yes and to that is yes, that is ironic and can be difficult. And the way it gets better is that people with nice and privileged lives suffer.
Yeah.
And then the faith that they've been carrying with them and not quite sure what to do with, suddenly is the only thing they've got in the lion's den. Mm-hmm. And like, that's the moment where they begin to really pray. Mm-hmm. So I don't see that distinction as something that the church says, shut up and pray. Mm-hmm. Because if Daniel can do it, you can do it. I think it's more like the church holds up stories like this to say the reality is we all do suffer in one way or not. And that when you find yours, small or large, this is the God you can expect to meet. I think like in the Minivangelism episode, I brought up that spiritual, didn't my Lord deliver Daniel? I think there is a kinship between the history of oppression of Jews and the Black experience that for me actually bears witness that this faith that I ascribe to in a life where I really don't have to is still something worth listening to. Yeah. Because if Jews can still pray despite what they've been put through, and if Black mothers can still pray and say things like, the Lord's never failed me yet, then for me to deny the faith because I can't see it, suddenly that is to contradict the witness of people who have really suffered.
Yeah.
Like if they can believe, I probably ought to stick it out a little longer. Mm-hmm. Because they've actually got reasons not to believe. My reasons not to believe are more like, I don't really need this.
Right.
Yeah. But people who have historically been in need, they're the ones who testify to the one that came and shut the lion's mouth, or the one that raised me from the dead. And so it is the story, like the Bible is the story of underdogs who don't point to their own deserving for having survived, right, but point to a faithful God for having preserved their people, time and time again. And that, I think that's a reason for, honestly, I think it's a reason for people of privilege to keep listening. Yeah. Because you're right. We're a couple straight white folks living in America in the 21st century.
Right.
Like we could be okay without this faith. We have also known some level of suffering. We have both had experiences of grace and rescue. So we have something to go on. But I think part of our persisting in faith is to say, I'm not doing this. I'm no longer doing this because it's normal. I'm no longer doing this because it's a crutch. I am doing this because it is true.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason why we give these stories to children is so that they will have a reference for the truth, to walk toward and then stand in when whatever kind of suffering faces them.
Yeah. I said it in the Minivangelism episode, but God is bigger than anything you're going to encounter.
Right. Which is still a promise which we can doubt or believe. And one of these days, we'll find ourselves at the edge of a lion's den. And like our prayer is, we'll have a story to remember, that will be with us all night and play whack-a-mole with the mouths of lions.
Yeah. How are you going to talk to your kids about this?
I think, so spoiler alert, Miriam is my kid. And I think I love that her conclusion is God always keeps us safe.
Yeah.
And I resisted the temptation to directly but that in the Minivangelism episode, because I think it's more complicated than that.
Yeah.
I am fine.
But she's 7.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I am fine with that being the conclusion. And my heart breaks for the day where something in my daughter's life problematizes that theology. Where something happens in her life that's where she realizes, oh, I am not safe. And so does that mean that God is gone? I'm happy for her to have the faith of a child right now.
Yeah.
And it just makes me conscious of the day when her faith is going to have to grow up.
So when that day comes, how are you going to talk to her about it?
I'm going to talk about Jesus. I mean, that kind of happened over the course of the Minivangelism episode, is that I did get a chance to say, notice with me, Daniel's life is spared, Jesus' life is not, and God is still God.
Yeah.
That God, it is God's intent to protect us from suffering, but apparently not all suffering. That this is perhaps not only a story of God preventing Daniel's suffering, but maybe even more so a story of God's presence with Daniel in suffering, leading him out of it. My own faith depends on that kind of God, even just as a way to make sense of it. Because I mean, and in our parenting, in my own parenting, there is an impulse to prevent all suffering for our children.
I think most parents do that.
And I'm also convinced that is not actually the role of the parent. If we prevent, we've talked about this before, if we prevent all suffering, that means our kids are bubble wrapped indoors all day,
Yeah. But I'm going to do everything in my power to prevent it. You can't stop me from trying to prevent it.
Sure.
I'm not going to be successful, and I know that, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to try.
Right. I'm like, in our household, our oldest just started swim team, and she's had her first week of practices, and each of them have ended in tears because she's doing a hard thing.
Yeah.
And she's not perfect at it as soon as she tries. And I am at some level reveling in witnessing her encounter that suffering. And what I'm trying to do is say, it is okay to cry. I am with you and you are doing this, which is different than it would be imaginable to say, oh, if it makes her cry, we're out.
Yeah.
But there is something about love that to truly love another person is to bear witness to their suffering, and let them try stuff. You know, let them be them. And don't go away. Don't pull them away and don't go away. But that was probably a deeper than average answer to, well, how am I going to talk about this with my kids? I'm going to let them, you know, enjoy lions. What about you?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is be like, those lions in that picture are wrong. And then...
Yeah. Let's go to Google and look at Asiatic lions, kids.
That were hunted to extinction. No, I think that something that was kind of given to me and that I liked was just the importance of prayer is what came out of this story. I always liked, you know, Daniel prayed 3 times a day. And so that was always used for like the reason why we pray before our meals.
Is we at least get our 3 in.
we have our 3 a day. And my kids are very like adamant about like praying before meals now. Which to the point where like sometimes I'll take a bite of food and then my youngest is like, Mom, you didn't pray. And I'm like, spit the food into a napkin. Okay. No, but I think that just, you know, prayer can easily become a coping mechanism, but I think that that's, if I'm going to have a coping mechanism, then talking to God is what it's going to be.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And just, you know, that Daniel didn't stop praying. And you know, Paul even says that, right? Like pray continuously. Like, I think this is the story that it illustrates a concept, right? It illustrates a faith practice of just like how important prayer is. I worry about it being like, Daniel prayed, so God protected Daniel. Right. Therefore, if you pray, all your prayers are answered.
Right. That would be a transaction.
Exactly. But it's just the Daniel prayed. He was in captivity. He prayed. He was among people that did not believe what he believed. He still prayed, right? And also, too, we talked about this in Jonah. The way that Daniel testifies or evangelizes to people, he's not walking into that court and telling the kings, you're not a messenger of your God, because Marduk, I looked up who the gods were. Marduk is not a real God, right? Like that wouldn't have been a thing. He was just like, okay, that's your practice. That's great. That's fantastic. But as for me and my house, this is what I'm doing, right? He just lived his life. And it was, people saw the favor in his life. People saw, you know, just how he was protected, and that God did speak. He didn't speak in like direct words, but he spoke in the way that Daniel lived. You know what I mean? God was very present, and people were able to sense and pick up that presence. Right. And I think just telling my girls that too, that like the way you live is a reflection, right, of your God. And when you encounter, we talked about this before, like my kids go to a very diverse school. So when you encounter people that believe differently than you, it's not a debate or a discussion. Right. Know what you believe, hold firm in what you believe, and just share it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Not with an intent to convert, but just to let people know who you are. Right.
Yeah, I love that. And I think like the mother's prayer is, I'm going to give my kids these practices. I'm going to give them this story. And someday, Lord, you're going to actually convince them of this story. Yeah. Because like part of what seems to be true about Daniel is he is convinced to the point where he's willing to break the law. Yeah. You know? And like that's part of my prayer for all our children. And it's also something that I am convinced that only God can do, is actually make in your heart the connection between these things that we've been talking to you about this whole time, and this God who is not just based on the word of your parents, but is the word of God for you.
Well, you're just giving you tools in your toolbox to live a Christian life.
Yeah, and so that you will know God's name when God is revealed to you. You will know it, that this is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Jonah, and Daniel, and Jesus. Right.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
Anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. You?
No, I think I'm good.
Good. Thanks, everybody, for listening. As always, you can reach out to us on Instagram or email at minivangelism@gmail.com.
And Facebook now.
And now I was getting there on Facebook, too. So if any of you out there are on Facebook, you can reach out to us there and you can share our stuff and tell people how much you like it. We have gotten to hear from a couple folks who we did not know were listening. And you have no idea the joy that it gives us when we realize who you are out there. So even if it's just to write to us on Instagram and give us a thumbs up emoji, something like that, it will encourage us and give us more reason to keep going.
Yeah.
Well, not that we're short on reasons to keep going, but it's great to get some encouragement. So, reach out to us, keep on listening, and we'll be back again soon.
Yeah. All right.
All right. God bless you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Minivangelism and the Driver's Seat are hosted by Anna Burrell and Drew Colby. Theme song written by David Burrell and produced by Evan Setzer. The theme song was performed by David Burrell, Drew Colby, and Evan Setzer. Podcast, sound design, and editing done by David Burrell. Minivangelism and the Driver's Seat are a ministry of Grace United Methodist Church in Manassas, Virginia. For more information, check out umcgrace.org.